Welcome to the Mind Like Books podcast. This time, joining me is the most rationally and logically thinking person on this podcast. Thanks for joining me, Adam.
Hello, thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to have you because you're definitely the kind of person to enjoy this book.
Am I now?
You're always the person who doesn't get into bullshit. You just understand the logical and rational side of the story.
I suppose so, yeah.
So this time we're talking about Arrthur C. Clarke, one of the three greatest, I think they're called the grandfathers of sci-fi. It's Heinlein, Asimov, and Clarke. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, maybe at some point I heard about it.
So this is the last one we had to cover at one point in this podcast. We talked about Heinlein in depth. We talked about how much we disliked the Foundation.
I actually liked the Foundation, but it was a long time ago that I read it. I want to read it again.
You did like it? Okay. It wasn't that bad, but I was disappointed.
It had its good points and its bad points. It definitely drags at some points, but I liked some of the stories, and the overarching story I found very interesting.
I should give it another chance because the series is really long. I love Heinlein and Arrthur C. Clarke. How do you like this guy out of the three?
I definitely like Heinlein more. I really like The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, and Starship Troopers were also very good. I also read the 2001 Space Odyssey.
Oh yeah, I want to ask about it.
And that was very good. I didn't like the ending, but otherwise it was very good. Definitely Heinlein, hard to tell. Probably Asimov and then Clarke, because like 2001 was good, but I think I like the Foundation a little bit more for the grander scale of it.
Clarke is the second best on my list. He's definitely one of the most famous. My parents loved him so much. He was always everywhere. They kept rereading the books and they read the whole Rama series. So today we're talking about one of his most famous books, Rendezvous with Rama. How did you like this book in general? Or how did you get into this book? Was it just because you are going through all the old sci-fi classics?
Yeah. It was just another sci-fi classic. I listened to 2001 very recently. So I was kind of like, since I was already doing Clarke, might as well listen to the other book as well. As for how much I liked it, I was whelmed.
Whelmed?
It wasn't bad, but it wasn't memorable.
Okay. I was very interested on what you have to say because we haven't talked about this beforehand.
Yeah.
So you were not put off by it? You were not
I wasn't like straight up bored by it. I think it suffers from the thing that happens with a lot of old sci-fi books where it just isn't as interesting today as it was back then, because these ideas were already explored so many times since, and possibly a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Inevitably, there will be very unfair comparisons, such as with Rendezvous, I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Did you think about like
the one
how it changed?
Very direct comparison I found was Stargate Universe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we will get to it. I have in the notes.
Okay. Well, I meant to say that it's very unfair to compare, but one of the appeals of this book is the engineering challenges and all the scientific discoveries that we talked about on our episode with Hail Mary, for example, and how Andy Weir had a very scientific, detailed, satisfying approach to describe all the overcoming engineering challenges. And this is very similar, but not as satisfying because it's too dated now.
I thought about this, but I don't think it's really... I think it really lacks in detail. It's all so...
That's true,
so
yes.
general. Yes, it's written in like almost like a report. It reads more like a biography, but it reminded me of Lovecraft in the writing style.
Oh, okay.
Because it's written like a scientific report a lot of the time, which is how Lovecraft wrote his books. Of course, the language is a lot less flowery. The vocabulary is different. A lot different. The fanciful writing of Lovecraft, that's not here, but the style of the narration is very similar. But the thing I had a real big problem with was that it wasn't very specific on anything.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
It felt very strange to me in how it's very dated feeling and at the same time above any time. Like there is no indication of when this is taking place. Like of course they say the year, but it doesn't feel like it's the olden days or if it's the future.
I think it's the lack of detail is saving it from feeling very old, because he doesn't mention any of the ideas of how technology would look in the future in very specifically that would put it into some historical context for us when this was written.
So that's the biggest difference with Andy Weir. He gets really in detail exactly how he would solve this, and here it's solved, like the problem is overcome, but it's very general. So it's kind of not as satisfying to overcome the challenge, like the technical challenge. Yeah. But on the other hand, I really appreciate it for an exercise in imagination. Like one of the things I remember about this book, I read it first when I was a teenager, and now I reread it or re-listened to it partially, was that because it's not detailed, it gives you so much space to think about what it actually is and looks like. And that's kind of the appeal, because there is so much to imagine. And you're constantly giving clues or things about the place you're exploring, but never anything specific is actually said. So you have so many ways to imagine what's happening.
Yeah,
that's good.
I suppose so. I prefer to have a bit more clearly lined up how things are supposed to look. But yeah, I can see the appeal here.
I would say it's the prime example of like the phrase people say about reading. Like it helps develop your imagination and it helps actually use your personality to project into the book. Like how would you imagine this going down? And if you don't care about that kind of thing, you will be extremely bored by this book, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
like either you love to imagine stuff and you're gonna be like dreamily imagining all this that's going on, but if you don't care and you're very technical, then you're like, okay, nothing happened really. It was very general and abstract and ambiguous. That's why I was very interested what you have to say. I was kind of sure you would hate this.
I didn't hate it, but I certainly didn't love it. I just kind of ended and then, yeah, whatever.
I liked it more than the first time. The first time I was very much bored, I have to say. I was much younger and I liked the first half, and then I was very kind of like meh.
I like the second half a bit more, I think. There is a lot more stuff that happens in the second half. To be fair, a lot of it doesn't really lead anywhere. It just happens because again, it's a report. Things happened. Things don't usually happen to have a effect down the line in the story because they're like observations of something.
I also have to say it was like interesting. I didn't feel like I want to stop reading it. I didn't want to actually reread the whole thing. I did reread the whole thing. It was kind of engaging. I liked it. So let's talk about the writer a little bit. I looked up some stuff. You read the 2001 Space Odyssey? Yeah. So maybe you were going into this with some kind of a high expectation?
Not really. However, I'm not sure what audio version you listened to, but I had the one that's on Audible. And the book begins with the narrator describing how he loves the book and how the book won 3 amazing awards. And that it's literally the best thing since sliced bread. That set the expectations a bit higher than I started with. So, yeah.
I think people, especially writers, regard Sir Arthur Charles Clarke as one of the best sci-fi writers ever. And I definitely had that image because my parents told me that. I think the generation before us, they really regarded him very, very highly because he was on television. He was a very famous public figure. And, for example, he commented when the moon landing happened. So they asked him to comment on the footage and give his scientific predictions about stuff. And he predicted a lot of things successfully about the future as far as science goes. So he was born in 1917 and he lived 90 years. A surprise to me. He was also knighted in 1998. So like I said, he was a futurist, inventor, writer, undersea explorer. He loved diving. He moved to Ceylon in Sri Lanka. And most of his life he spent there. Did you know that?
No, literally nothing about his life.
In 1950s, he moved there. And he lived there until 2008 when he passed away. And he had a partner there. I forgot his name, but it's a very foreign name I can't pronounce. He got married for a few years, but then he got divorced. And the main reason that he didn't want to talk about, but why he moved to Sri Lanka was that they were very much tolerant about homosexuality. And in Britain, where he's from, they were not at the time. And he just didn't want to deal with that. So he didn't comment on it, but he lived with his partner happily in Sri Lanka.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know he was gay.
Me neither.
He was asked about it many times. I looked up, and to the journalist, officially on record, he says he was game, but merely mildly cheerful in the happy way, not in the homosexual way, is what he replied.
Okay. That's an interesting way to put it.
He was just trying to, not cause any controversy.
I
And
suppose.
people who talked about him, that they said that he was such a nice guy and he was really, really into, having boyfriends all the time and all this. But he never talked about it. And I guess in Ceylon, it wasn't a big deal. So it was the perfect place for him. And that's also where he spent all of his time diving and exploring under sea. It was a surprise. I didn't know anything about it. But anyway, about what he's famous for, he won a bunch of prizes: a Hugo Prize, Nebula Prize, Kalinga Prize for popularizing science. He wrote in magazines and books, and he was on TV. And he wrote a lot about the future, predicting the future. Did you hear about anything about what he predicted?
I don't know the specifics, but thinking back to 2001, I think that was pretty like forward thinking.
Yeah, that was
that one definitely aged very well, I would say.
Of course, the movie is accurate as far as predicting the future of technology. He also predicted something called the global library, that there will be an interconnected informational source available to everybody, and also satellite broadcasts. He was trying to develop a system of satellites that would orbit the Earth, which he didn't do himself, but he contributed to that a lot. And most of the things he predicted were kind of grounded and very detailed and described in a way that made a lot of sense. So I think that's why he was so popular. And he also famously wrote about sci-fi ideas, and he wrote 3 laws, Clarke's 3 laws. Which one of the law is very famous and many people quote it. I didn't know that's from him. The first law says that when a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, he is almost certainly right. When he states that something is impossible, he is almost certainly wrong. So that was the first law. The second law was that the only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
But the third law is super famous, and that says that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Oh, I didn't know that was from him. That's cool.
Yes. So that's enough about Arthur C. Clarke. Unfortunately, he passed away because of polio, post-polio syndrome, in a wheelchair. He was bound to the wheelchair for many, many years. But he had a long life, and I saw some photos with his partner in Sri Lanka. He looked really happy. So I think he made the right choice to immigrate to Sri Lanka rather than stay in Britain and be ostracized for being gay. That's one of the things I wanted to say, actually. And we were talking about the great 3, like Heinlein and Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke. So Heinlein was very interested, and they met with Clarke in Sri Lanka. And there is an article I found that they were flying around the whole country in a helicopter, Heinlein and Arthur C. Clarke, exploring Ceylon and Sri Lanka. And I can't not be amused by the thought of our grumpy Uncle Heinlein flying in with Arthur C. Clarke in a helicopter in Sri Lanka and like exploring the beaches. I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's true. That's good.
They should make a TV show about that. Let's get into the book, Rama, Rendezvous with Rama from 1973. Did you know it's a long series?
I knew it had several books in the series, but I suspected and quickly discovered that most of them are not worth reading.
When I was rereading this, I was like, yes, finally we can read the sequels. And then I was like, oh, Adam's not reading the sequels.
No. It's interesting. So many authors from this time period wrote sequels to their famous books. I'm not sure, maybe they were not that famous back then, but they wrote ton of sequels and they all suck. Like, it's the same author, but 2001 has sequels as well.
Yeah, I didn't know
they are
that
not
either,
very good. Some are downright awful from what I've read.
Yeah, I saw that. I would love to read the first one. I've never read it, so that's one of the books I would like to cover on the podcast sometime. So maybe we can do that.
It's pretty short.
Yeah. So with Rama, there are also 4 books, and there are some in-between books.
Yeah.
So there is Rama 1, Rama 2. Then there is the second one is literally called Rama 2. Then there is The Garden of Rama and Rama Revealed. And some of the books were written with along with Gentry Lee, who is the chief engineer at the Solar System Exploration Directorate, at the propulsion laboratory in California. So very technical guy. And he wrote some books that fill in the gaps in between the Rama books. All of these, except the first one, are poorly rated. Not poorly rated, but people are very disgruntled about them. I don't know what it is, but I couldn't find anything good about them. Like the reviews on Goodreads, for example, many people are like, I was so excited, don't read it.
Yeah, it's at best they're like, okay. But...
My parents always told me that they're amazing, so I don't know.
That's interesting.
So this one, the first one is only 220 pages long, I think. Very short, and it's very easy to read.
8 hours long, the audiobook, and it's basically discovery and exploration of the Rama spacecraft. That's kind of about it as far as spoilers go.
In general, it's very swift. Like the pace at the beginning of the book is so fast. I was writing, messaging Adam when I was reading this. I was like, they're like, we're constructing a probe. The probe has come back, and this is what he decided after what it found. It's like in one paragraph, like so much happens. And that's like the first few chapters, and then the pace kind of slows down when there is something happening we'll talk about. And then it gets kind of like a normal pace at the end. Like the second half is
that
more well-paced, I think. So it kind of like super speeds up, and then it slows down almost to a halt, I felt like.
Yeah.
And then it gets over something, and then it's kind of okay. That's how I felt.
Clarke really wanted to get onto the Rama, so he sped around the first section of the book, which is literally just chapter or so. I'm just very quick. And then he started getting into specific details that he spent way too much time on before he found a reasonable pace to finish off the book.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Also, another tidbit, he wrote a lot of memoirs and diaries, and he sealed them and locked them away and gave it to somebody, and he said, they shall be opened and published only 30 years after I have died, and the reason is they're too embarrassing.
Okay, that's interesting. Well,
so we're still waiting, like 10 more years, I guess, to open them. He died in 2008. I hope there's gonna be something like in 10, 15 years when finally the secret Clarke super secret embarrassing diary is revealed. There's gonna be like a giant section about Heinlein flying in a helicopter with Clarke, and then they have sex or something.
I'm imagining it like the guy from Top Gear, our man in Japan. Goes around Japan. I'm kind of imagining it like, is this kind of older but curious guy checking out Japan, kind of imagining the same with these two older gentlemen exploring Sri Lanka on their helicopter.
Amazing. I would love to know what went on there, so I'm definitely gonna I hope I'll remember this in 15 years if I'm still alive. Hopefully I am, to look up Heinlein in the Clarke's diaries. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. So before we get into spoilers, I want to quickly mention the movies. So of course, 2001 is a great movie, and they always wanted to make a movie about the Rendezvous with Rama, and many directors tried to get it started. David Fincher wanted to make it, was the closest to it in 2008, but then it went in development hell.
Yeah, I think I read that. Who was it? Famous actor Morgan Freeman tries to
yes, that's what I
push
meant to
it
say.
forward too, but unsuccessful so far at least.
He has his production company, and he's been trying to make this movie happen for a long time. And because of financing and because of Morgan Freeman's health, it didn't happen. So that got cancelled. Then with David Fincher, it got cancelled. Then some other people tried to do it, it got cancelled. And in 2021, Denis Villeneuve, who filmed the Dune movie, he announced that he might or possibly already is planning to actually adapt this into a movie.
Can't really imagine how you've adapted this into a movie. It
will be 100% on the visuals.
It's the same like how Del Toro is trying to adapt at the Mountains of Madness by Lovecraft.
Oh, yeah.
That's also
that's your favorite.
I can't imagine being adapted. It doesn't have the story structure for a movie like at all. We have to completely redo it. I don't know. I don't get it.
So before we get into spoilers, would you recommend this?
Probably not.
It's too bad.
Just read the 2001. That's good.
Yeah,
This
I would recommend it, I guess.
it's okay, but if you are really into like Clarke and imagination, sure. But otherwise, I don't think it's that noteworthy.
I was surprised that I was so interested when I was reading it the second time. I thought I would definitely skip parts, or I would just skip to the end, but it actually kept me going. So it's really short, so you can get through it very easily. So if you're
fair,
curious...
yeah. It's not boring, definitely.
Also, one more thing we can say without spoilers is the characters are basically non-exist.
Yeah, that's true. There are very few even named characters, but one thing to note here, they're all incredibly competent. That stood out. Usually you have some drama is generated by someone being a bit incompetent. Everyone is extremely competent. This is like a high profile mission and it has to succeed. We have the best people.
Yeah.
And that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, no mistakes really, that's true. In the first quarter of the book, not only there are no memorable characters, there are no characters. Like the stuff that happens, there was just like this happened, that happened, we've done this and that, and we've sent this ship. Oh, and then finally some people are on this ship and these are the people. And then they introduce them like after you've been reading a bunch. And even then, there is no character to be found. Then it's a competent spaceman.
The main character is the Rama itself, the ship.
So if you're there for the characters, don't read this. This is very much hard sci-fi, just sci-fi. Like if you don't like sci-fi, never read this. Like I don't think it's for you. If you're into sci-fi, if you're into wondering about space and exploration, then I'd recommend it. I think it's not overstaying its welcome, and I wasn't bored at all. So if you want to read this, stop now. If you don't want to read this, let's look at the story. Let's talk about it step by step. This time it's not very complicated, and I'm very curious what you have to say about some of the elements. So the story is set in 2130, and Italy and Europe is destroyed immediately by an asteroid falling on it. Yeah, and it happens on 9/11. I was like, that's a coincidence.
I didn't notice the date there, but yeah. Well.
It was 9/11 2077. And I was like, what? It's like a very strange date. Okay.
Interesting coincidence.
So they develop a space guard system to monitor asteroids. They try to calculate which asteroids could hit Earth and all this. And it's kind of skipped and not important at all in this book.
It just explains how they discovered Rama.
Which is a spaceship coming to the solar system. And they detect it, and then the whole book is basically about exploring this spaceship. Yeah. They name it Rama because they mentioned they ran out of European god names. So they had to get Indian god names for it.
That was pretty funny.
It was kind of funny. So they construct a probe, and they set a probe to take photos of it, and they are amazed, and then they have these discussions about how to explore it, and it all happens so fast. I was like, slow down, what's happening? Like, probes come, gone, photos done, taken. Like, literally in one sentence, they were like, we're planning to send a probe, and the second sentence is, the probe came back with this. I was like, what? Just wait a minute. What was this probe? What did it do? Okay, I guess that doesn't matter. So how do they get to the spaceship? Or maybe what does it look like is what we should say first.
It looks like a can. It's just a cylinder. Just a featureless cylinder, basically. Yeah.
I struggled with imagining the edges. Did you imagine the edges to be sharp or oval,
sharp edges?
But they never say that. Like, this is like a good example. So it's a giant ass spaceship. It's the main focus of this book, and they never really say what the shape is other than it's a cylinder. And is it completely flat on the front and back? I guess.
I think that's how I imagined it. But I think they mentioned that there are a few things sticking out of it that they could land on. I think. Because they needed to land in a way that centrifugal force that would pull the ship against this thing that's sticking out so that they could land on it.
It's spinning, so they have this thing going on, same with 2001 Space Odyssey. They're rotating the ship to make artificial gravity.
So they have to quickly find the ship that could land there. I think they didn't really have the ship, I think. They needed very quickly to find a crew and a ship that's close enough and send them there. They weren't exactly completely prepared for the job.
They were talking about they don't know how long it's gonna stay in the solar system, how fast it's gonna be moving. There were all these like calculations and awe about this is the first time we're like encountering this problem. Is it alive? Is it a spaceship? Is it an asteroid?
Now that we are talking about it, it feels kind of weird that they never sent a second ship.
Yeah,
They were there for
that's true.
weeks, at least weeks, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
If not months, and they never sent a second ship. That's kind of weird now that we think.
I guess they didn't have any, and already it was a struggle to put this one at the center of the
guess.
rotation, so there wasn't any space for another one. I guess they could go in the other side. I guess.
Maybe. Huh.
But that was like the weirdest thing for me at the beginning. They were like, okay, it's a cylinder, and then we landed the ship on the cylinder, and then how does the ship like stay there? I guess somehow, and then how do we get inside of this giant cylinder? And oh, there is a hatch.
Yeah, there.
And I was like, what?
How do we get inside? And we found the hatch. Oh, okay.
And you conveniently open it, and you're in. And I was like, so, like, what does the hatch look like? What the hell? How is it sealed? Is there like a pressure like in between room to not depressurize the space? What? How? What?
I think they mentioned that there was an airlock, but I'm not entirely sure. Nor how
they kind of mentioned
it.
things, but this is the kind of my biggest problem with this book. Like they kind of mention these things, but they kind of don't. And you're
They're
like,
not very
I guess it's
specific
okay.
about the things.
And like this, like bit about the hatch, it made me think that the spaceship Rama is somehow made for people the whole time, because it made me think like all these things are designed for people intentionally, but it's never answered.
A lot of it does feel strangely designed for humanoid aliens.
So that's why I was very curious about the sequels, if they like elaborate on that, and I would be curious if it's because it's easy to imagine it similar to what people do, or if it's intentionally similar because the aliens designed it for people or something like that. Well, okay. So they get into Rama and they discover this giant cylindrical place. This was my favorite part of the book. Mystery of what this is. Not yours, I guess.
It was okay. Like the beginning started well. Like we are looking down, trying to see what we can see from the like observation deck, basically that they find. That was good. Then they discovered the stairs.
So before they got to the stairs, I want to say this is probably my most memorable part. I remembered from reading it the first time how they describe this as an enormous space that's dark, and the light that they shine that's pretty strong cannot reach the end.
Yeah.
So it kind of disappears in like a mist, like in the darkness, in the void. And it's so vast, and the sensation of the gravity, because they are at the center of the rotation, so as the farther they go away from the center of the axis in the middle of the cylinder, the more they start like falling to the sides. It's kind of like a strange, daunting weight that you can't see the ends of it. It's like this huge giant space, but you're enclosed in it. And they talk about the mental issues that astronauts have to fight with deciding what's up and down, which this object completely messes with. It's a cylinder that rotates, and the round sides is the down, kind of, I guess. But it's difficult to think about it that way, so you pick one side of the cylinder.
There is no sky, because there is just more ground above you. Yeah, that's pretty weird, I suppose.
And then it's the easiest, like the main character, he says, okay, I've decided that the way we got in is the top, and the way at the other end, like the bottom of the cylinder is the bottom, and then it immediately gives me anxiety because I feel like I'm gonna fall through the cylinder down the axis to the very bottom, so I can't think about it like that. So it was like the most interesting kind of a mind duck, interesting thing to think about, like how would you feel in this space, and how difficult it would be to wrap your mind about it to be somehow grounded to something, and how they struggled with that was what I most remembered from this book.
I didn't find this to be a very difficult concept to like.
It's not.
Yeah,
But the
it's
way
not.
it's described makes you think about it.
Gravity is where it pulls. That's about it. I didn't feel this was that amazing, but yeah, the discovery of the space that was interesting. I like that.
That's probably where it goes down from, in my opinion, literally.
Yeah,
so
literally.
now we can talk about the stairs.
Onto the only one of the few things in the book that is described in minute detail.
So much detail about these stairs. And I don't even know what they look like after all this. Like, what do they look like?
Yeah, that's the thing. It spends so much time describing the stairs, how they got down the stairs, how they got up the stairs, how difficult it was, in what formation then they climbed, how they moved stuff up and down. In some ways, they describe the stairs a little, but not really. So
I was sure when I was reading this, then this is the part you would hate the most.
yeah, I kind of hated this part. Like after the first at least half an hour of the stairs, I was like, okay, I know enough about these stairs. I don't need. I'm pretty sure it was at least 2 hours of the book dedicated to the fucking
was like
stairs.
a huge chunk. After basically fast forwarding through all the events, you spent like the same amount of time, maybe 5 times longer, just going down and up the stairs.
It was incredible.
I was messaging you and I was like, so this first part was so fast and blah blah, and how did you like it? And then you immediately replied, and then they discovered stairs, and I was like, yep.
I don't know what he was thinking. If he's really into stairs, or I don't know. It was bizarre.
And then there is also a ladder, and the ladder goes to the. I don't understand what's there.
I imagine it in a way that the closer you get to the center of the cylinder,
axis.
Yeah, the steeper the stairs get, and at some point they just become like a ladder.
But they make it a huge deal how difficult and dangerous it is to slip down the stairs, and if the stairs are steeper and steeper, it's more and more dangerous. I don't know. And also, why do aliens have ladders? I guess it's common for creatures to grab onto things, so it's a ladder. But does the ladder look like a ladder we imagine? Like, that's what I wanted them to say. Like, it's a strange ladder, or it's a ladder exactly like we have. They don't say.
They don't say. Yeah, it's a ladder. To be fair, they do question the purpose of the stairs. Like, is it like emergency exit, or what is it? They don't know. That's answer to a lot of questions they propose. To be fair, this section of the book also talked a bit about the crew, a little.
And everybody's like, this person's competent,
yeah,
this person's amazing, and this person's great too.
I think they also mentioned the simps in this section.
Oh yeah, that was interesting.
They have like slave monkeys to do menial jobs
on the spaceships.
On the space on the spaceship that they arrived on, they have somewhat intelligent monkey slaves to do menial tasks.
So strange. Like, I have no idea how to feel about this. And they have a slave master, a monkey master, who is very emotionally attached to them. And they have a point in the story that if the ship has an accident, all the monkeys have to be disposed of and killed, and the slave master usually kills himself because he cannot deal with the emotional.
But again, there is like several, at least paragraphs dedicated to the monkeys. We never hear about the monkeys again.
Exactly. I was like, this is gonna be interesting. I forgot this part of this book, and then it's not there ever again.
Yeah.
So but interesting concept.
Definitely interesting concept. Shame it wasn't expanded upon. Almost like I read a book about this.
Like, I was sure they would send the monkeys in Rama at some point. Have them do something. Nope. No. Do you feel like it's okay to have slave monkeys? Like, I don't know how to feel about this.
I mean, it is kind of weird. It didn't seem like they were mistreating them, at least.
But they talked about them in a very bad way. They were like, these simps, they're gonna repair our engine. And if there's something dangerous, send the simps. And if the ship is going to be evacuated, F the simps. Sorry. There's a rule about that. It's like, So if we treat them like, beings, then there shouldn't be these laws about them.
It was a bit questionable.
Yeah.
Interesting idea.
Well, anyway, so they get into the space and they go down these stairs, and the whole huge part of this book is just them going down and up these stairs with very limited resources and trying to explore as much of the spaceship as possible.
Yeah. At some point, the lights turn on.
So first it's dark and daunting, and then they discover that along the length of the cylinder there are, I think, 6 stripes of light beams that basically simulate sunlight inside of this world. That's a giant cylinder.
Yeah.
And they discover there's a sea, and there is a bunch of objects and
cities of some sort.
So they basically try to make a map, and they send expeditions from the spaceship called Endeavour, I think. Yeah. Down the stairs and then explore some parts, but it gets more and more difficult to get up and down these stairs. So they try to come up with other ways to explore Rama. And that's basically the whole book is just exploring Rama.
Pretty much, especially the first part is a lot of the descriptions of how they plan. We want to explore one of the cities, but they are very far away. It will take too much time. which one is the closest, so on, so on. So I think they end up going to Paris, which just ends up being a bunch of like concrete boxes.
Yeah, everything is described as very clean, unused, untouched.
How did you imagine what they were walking on?
Exactly, like there's nothing is described.
That's
in
one
this book.
thing that like bothered me the entire time, because I think on all of the pictures or interpretations that I saw, there was grass. I don't think that
I never imagined that.
but at the same time, like at any point, I don't think if there was grass, that surely would be a point. That would be like a living thing there. So
Exactly.
I think there wasn't grass, but okay. I don't know, but still, it wasn't very like described what they were walking on. Like,
Yeah, there's like all the materials. I was waiting for them to say it was reflective, it was hard, it was slippery. Like they talk about the friction on the stairs.
Yeah.
That's about it.
and the concrete boxes in the cities, and that's also about it. Maybe not concrete, but boxes anyway.
I imagined it as flat but not smooth, some sort of not steel, but like a material that's neither rock, neither steel, neither soil, but it's like a solid thing that's not like completely shiny smooth.
Yeah, something like that.
It's very strange. Like you can imagine this so many ways. They never really say anything specifically. So that's kind of an interesting exercise in painting this world in your mind, which I guess I enjoyed.
Yeah.
I felt like almost if you were in a high school class and there was like this artist in the painting class and he was like, close your eyes and I'll paint a picture and this is there and you enter this area and there was this and that and he never really says anything and then he's like, I now paint and let your imagination flow.
A bit like that.
That's what I felt like almost. So the whole book basically is based on this overcoming of a technical engineering challenge and discovering how like a biome like in the cylinder works, like how the weather inside of it works because it's giant, how the liquid works in there.
It kind of starts up. It almost feels like some sort of startup sequence because first like they get in, it's dark, then the lights turn on. I think at some point the wind starts blowing.
I think the wind starts because they discover the sea and it's all frozen, so when the ice start falling, the heat and evaporation, they mention at one point in the book that it got more humid and it's much more comfortable to be in.
The wind starts blowing and they run away from the sea because they're worried that they won't be able to ascend the stairs again.
They do this sci-fi trope where they detect that there is enough oxygen, so they immediately remove their space suits and the helmets. I was like, damn it! And then they mention there's a lot of chemicals in this like primordial soup of a sea. They keep like guessing what's gonna be in there. And if you fall in it, you won't die, but it might be poisonous and all this. There is this character who is like a weather specialist or something. Like the scientists keep talking about what Rama is and what it means and what they discovered. And meanwhile, the astronauts are exploring it. And this guy is always like, I like to let you know that I have studied astrology, astronomy, and the weather for years and years to come. So hurricanes, get out of Rama now! Oh my God, no, hurricanes! And the main characters are like, he might be right. Let's evacuate. That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So,
although a lot of these speculations amount to we don't know.
Yes.
The propulsion system of Rama. It could be space drive. The mystical space drive. You don't even know how space drive looks, but it could be space drive.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of freeing and kind of annoying at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like
both at the same time.
So then they find out they can't get very far. So they have like an idea to build a sky bicycle.
At the other end of the cylinder, from the observation deck, there are the spikes, and they know how to get there. And some guy on the ship, he races like space bikes, and he smuggled a space bike onto the ship. And he's like, yeah, I have a space bike that I could fly on over there. Very convenient. So he flies there.
So we didn't say it was all dark and then the light lit up. They can see all the way. Yeah. There's also like a daunting description. And then at the very end, there's like a spiky something that they want to explore. So that's why they go there.
Yeah. And it's behind the sea. They can't cross the sea because the cliff on the other side of the sea than where they are. so they can't even build a ship to get there. So space bike time. So this guy flies his space bike, then gets hit by electricity that is generated around the spikes, and
So did you
crash
think the
lands.
spikes were supposed to cause rain and lightning, or was it just something else?
I don't think they like discovered the purpose of them.
I felt like it was supposed to start weather, like start some kind of a weather cycle.
It would make sense.
Well, so he gets too close to it and he falls down with the bike.
Yeah.
Almost dies, but doesn't die.
Yeah.
Isn't really hurt that much, I guess.
Actually, no. He kind of like, I guess, steers the bike a little so that he doesn't crash land too badly. After he crash lands, we finally find the aliens. I guess, or not. It's a crab.
So until this crab, nothing was animated or living or moving or interesting in any way in Rama, basically.
Suddenly a crab, which takes apart the bike, throws it into a bin, and walks away with it.
It's like a giant crab, and it like dismantles the
pretty much.
bicycle that he fell on and disposes of it like trash.
So he just follows the crab. The crab walks into one of the holes that are randomly scattered across.
Yeah, basically like a robot.
Yeah.
And they just dispose of trash. We start encountering all kinds of robots, and they start calling them biots. And they keep speculating about what it means and what they're doing and why they're there and are they aliens, are they robots, and nobody knows anything. And they just guess it's like a crew, like an automated crew in Rama to take care of things.
Yeah, a lot of focus is placed on that there are 3 legs, that everything on Rama is somehow 3 times, 3 sets of stairs.
Yes. Also, the book ends on somebody saying the Ramans think in threes or think
Yeah. At some point, this guy, one of the few named characters in the book, crash landed, finds a flower. Also doesn't lead anywhere.
It's like
Okay,
it's like mysteriously, I guess, creative.
fascinating.
There's like a lattice, like a cubical grid, 3D grid that guarded like a flower that looked like an earth flower. And he was like stuffing his body in through this grid to get the flower. And he was very difficult. So it's like a whole scene. And then he gets like a piece of the flower as a sample and he gets out and that's it.
I thought the flower was actually like a weed, that it was growing from somewhere where it wasn't supposed to be growing. It was behind some grid or something, but it's
I
weird.
imagined it as like an experiment because they said it emerged from the ground in like a special place, like a special hole, and then when he took a piece of the flower retracted back into the ground and it like closed up or something. Do you remember that part?
Yeah, something like that.
So I thought it was like a mechanical thing that tried to simulate like a flower or something, and then it would be controlled because he said that the flower moved very quickly and it like retracted into itself and disappeared.
No, I thought it's just like more of the life finds a way, like that even in this mechanical world, life somehow like grew here like little flower, and it's like alien flower, so it moves a lot and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, it's in this way I like this book a lot. Like you can take it in many ways.
This section was very interesting. A lot of it didn't lead anywhere, but at least it was interesting.
That's the whole book. It doesn't go anywhere, but it's interesting to think about. And I guess that's it. Like the whole purpose of why the Raman spaceship came. They talk about many ideas and reasons. One of them, like from the religious perspective, they said it could be the Ark, and they prepared it for people, and people should like load up on the spaceship. Other theory is that it's gonna start orbiting the sun, and it's just gonna stay in the solar system to give people time to get on it and explore it, and then it could be dangerous. Or so people have all these ideas, which I like that part a lot. That was interesting.
Yeah, that was good. And then the Hermians fire a rocket at it. So that solves everything.
So before the Hermians attack, so just to quickly sum up, this guy takes the flower, and the whole part of this book is how to rescue him because he's on the other side of the sea. And they try to come up with ways to get him out of there so he doesn't die. And he has this emotional moment where he's basically dead, but his first step of humankind on this undiscovered spaceship, so he's kind of like accomplished in his life. So he's like, okay, I did something, but now I have to die. But of course he doesn't die, and they save him with this elaborate plan. There's like an action scene where he jumps off of a cliff into the sea, and he uses his t-shirt to stir himself, like to fly a little bit, and then they use the tidal wave of of like the Rama spaceship jerking in space, so they like cause a tidal wave in the sea, and that's what propels him to the other side of the sea, and it's all this drama.
And they build a ship of some sort now.
And they build a ship, and all
yeah.
kind of stuff happens, and they finally save him. But it was kind of clever, and I think this would be fun in the movie. And let's not get into all these details. They encounter more creatures, and what are they called? The people who fired the rocket?
Hermians.
Hermians?
From Mercury.
From Mercury.
Yeah.
We didn't say different nations live on different planets, from Mars, Mercury, and on Moon. I don't remember.
Yeah. It's like instead of like Earth's nations, it's planetary nations.
So different nations have different opinions about Rama, and the Mercurians, Hermians. What are they called, Hermians?
I'm not sure.
Are they hermits? So they are very much disagreeing with letting Rama just freely float into the solar system, and they basically, I think the reason was simply they cannot be sure that Rama is not hostile. So rather than risking it to destroy all of humanity, we have to destroy it first. So they sent a nuke or some kind of bomb, like a rocket, that should destroy Rama, and they sent a message to Endeavor and the people exploring Rama, and they're like, okay, you've got an hour to get out, and if you don't get out, bad luck, we are detonating this. And of course, I imagined them all being American, the Endeavor group. Yeah. And of course, they were like, no, that's not happening, excuse me, we're gonna fly there and cut the wire with pliers.
Yeah. I think they even describe how he was very ready and his trusty cutters to cut the wire. Like,
so one of the very competent spacemen, like a Star Wars space scooter, like suddenly, and then he just like parks it next to the bomb and just like ties it to it, and then climbs on it and cuts the wire. I was like, what?
Again, very competent, no issue, like. Easy.
So they defuse the bomb, they come back and explore Rama more, and then they have all these theories how they cannot be there because it gets overheated, it's getting too close to the sun, and blah blah blah. And they discover more creatures. There's like a three-legged ball on spiny legs, spindly legs running around.
Yeah, there are some that are like cleaning up, there are others that discover things, they start rummaging through the camps. Even, I think, taking away some things, but at some point they decide that I guess we are not touching this, so they leave the camps. But around the time that they defuse the bomb, Rama starts getting too hot and they are preparing to leave, and that kind of it, they pack up and leave. They feel bad about leaving stuff behind.
Before they leave, there's a section about these observers, like the ball on the three legs. So one of these creatures falls from some height and dies or gets broken, so they dissect it. It was like a big deal. Because one of the crew members, she wanted to accidentally destroy it, or just she was just praying that it gets damaged, and she wanted to dissect it. So finally she gets to dissect it, and
we are getting to section of the book where it speeds up again. I think here starts getting like, this is couple paragraphs. This is not a chapter even.
Yeah, that was, again, it's just like, finish this book. Let's go. Basically, they conclude that they're all robots of some sort. Like, they're not really Ramans or like aliens. And then before they leave, they cut into like a wall or something to have like a final discovery.
Paris, they want to look into one of these boxes that they find. So they end up, because they have to leave and they really want to know what's inside. They cut a hole in the wall, get in and discover that it's kind of like a library. That there are these columns filled with like examples of things. Strangely large, the objects.
They're like 3D holograms or something. Like they were 1-to-1 size. They were like real life sized, but they were just projections of the things. There was like a crystal, I imagined, or some kind of see-through material, and inside of it you could see the thing, but it was only a display of the thing because it like flickered or changed the display or something.
They were Earth's artifacts, like things from Earth. I don't think there were like alien things and.
I forgot what they were. I thought they were like different things. We don't know what they are.
Okay. I think there were definitely some artifacts from Earth, but I'm not sure if all of them.
So that's interesting. I forgot that part. But one of them is a being, a very large creature that they speculated was a Raman, and they don't say very much about what it looks like. So it was there. But what was it? We don't know.
Again, we don't know. Very cool. No idea what it is.
Yeah, so there's so much it can be done with this movie, and like it can be anything. It's kind of strange. So Rama starts shutting down. It starts getting dark, so they have to leave. We get to the end of the book. The spaceship just leaves.
Yeah, this is the Stargate Universe moment because
Okay.
Clearly the ship is there for a reason and it's nearing the sun. What could it be doing with the sun? Obviously, it's going to recharge, which is exactly what the ship in Stargate Universe does. It recharges from stars.
I remember that. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it does that and flies away.
And I was wondering if somebody's gonna be like a hero to stay on the ship or something, like to go away with the ship. I was expecting that. Also, they keep talking about how the ship's going to get burned, and then it like manifests this super shield around it to shield away from the sun and all this.
And suddenly space drive. I like how fascinated by the space drive.
Also uses the gravity of the sun to like slingshot away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I kind of liked it.
Okay.
For the length of it, there was a lot packed in. Like it was very short and a lot was explored. And it very much makes sense that nobody knows what it was. So we can't really talk about it that much in detail. So it's kind of interesting to think about. But there wasn't anything the book kind of like said. Like
there is not
message.
much like conclusive substance or message because it's a lot of somewhat interesting but very unspecific ideas that you could imagine, but not much like of an opinion is gave on them. Like, okay.
Based on what we just said, I would be sure I would hate it. But somehow I liked it.
It's well written. Concepts are not uninteresting. It's just, it's frustrating how unspecific it is in certain things.
Okay.
And, to be fair, the pace is all over the place. That's kind of annoying. But
that's annoying, yes. So I would be curious. Like, I would read the sequel, but I guess you already decided that you don't.
Ah, no, I'm not reading the sequel. I have better things to do. More interesting sci-fi books to read.
Maybe the people just don't know what they want. Like, I don't think it has to be that bad, the sequels. But having said that, the sequels are so much longer.
That's interesting. Actually, it's kind of interesting because the issues that I read about that people have with the second and third book is that they are too specific. That they like uncover the mystery. And now I'm thinking, wait a minute, we complained about lack of specificity. Maybe I would like. Okay.
But yeah, that's the Rendezvous with Rama. Thank you for talking about it.
Thank you for having me. This was definitely one of the books that I wanted to talk about with someone.
Okay.
And it's not the case always. Some of the books I don't have much to say about. This one was definitely worth discussing.
Thank you again. All right, so see you on the next episode.
Bye.
On the next episode, we're going to take a break from sci-fi and look at Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. Martin is joining me for that one. So rate us on Apple Podcasts and see you on the next one.